Hi, my name is Paloma, and I love reading. And recently, a friend told me that maybe I have adult ADHD. So I decided to do some reading and try to figure out is that the case? Yes or no? I also have a cat, so you might hear my cat in the background. I hope it's not too distracting. So I read this book, Driven to Distraction by Hallowell and Ratey, and I figured I'd share with you a little bit of what I learned and see what you think. So, one of the main takeaways I got from the book is that most people with ADD either have the inattention variety or the hyperactive variety. And then there's some people who have both. If you struggle with inattention, you probably have a problem being detail oriented. Maybe you lose things a lot. Maybe you're very easily distracted. These all make sense when you think of inattention. If you're hyperactive, then you struggle with sitting in the same seat, staying still. You feel like maybe you're driven like a motor. And then some people have a combination of both of these, both adults and children. So reading through the book, one of the things I liked a lot is that he has a lot of case studies, or they have a lot of case studies of different people and their experiences, sometimes going back for adults all the way till their childhood. They talk about things their teachers wrote about them that would maybe give some hints that these people were struggling with something that was just more than being a little, hyper, as people might say. There are also some case studies of children, and from children as young as maybe 6 to kids in high school and even semi-kids in college who weren't diagnosed but show a lot of signs. So I liked hearing people's backgrounds and maybe what some of the warning signs were of just people who have a hard time maybe even keeping their room clean, or always seem to be getting into trouble, always breaking things. Maybe at school they have very erratic performance. Sometimes under pressure these people perform very well and then they lose steam. So that was very helpful for me. As far as kids go, it seems like a lot of kids who have it very prominently struggle a lot. Though it can be managed, and I'll talk more about how the authors recommend you manage ADHD. For adults, you see some case studies of adults who are very successful, from a therapist or psychologist who has had it all her life but just found a way to manage it and kind of diagnosed herself later in life, to a successful businessman who one of the authors is treating for 5 years. They just talk as part of almost like a business coaching relationship. And then at some point, the author realizes, oh, hey, maybe these other problems are associated with ADHD, but the individual was managing his situation so well that the author didn't even think of that for a long time. Common problems that people have, I'll just run over a couple of them. Restraining impulses. People have a big difficulty maybe not saying something inappropriate, even though they know it's inappropriate. They just say it, or touching something that they know they're not supposed to touch, particularly children. Other problems people have are maybe they're particularly messy. They have a hard time organizing physical space, or they're very forgetful. They're always losing things. Maybe they have addictive personalities. A lot of people, that's my cat, a lot of people self-medicate with alcohol. Some people use cocaine because while for most people cocaine it makes them more, I guess, charged or more active. For people with ADHD, it helps them kind of calm down a little bit and brings a little bit of peace to their brain in the same way that some of these drugs work, these over-the-counter prescription drugs, rather. So people self-medicate with cocaine and alcohol and all sorts of other drugs. So that's another part, maybe a slightly addictive personality. Other people have a tough time focusing on one activity. And in adults in particular, another big sign is low self-esteem, because people who've been struggling with all these different issues for a long time and feel this constant sense of disappointment, or that they haven't been measuring up to certain standards they've set for themselves or others have set for themselves, they manifest that in low self-image. And oftentimes people will have a low self-image of themselves, even if other people think much better of them, that they're not good at evaluating themselves. So those are some common problems that people have. In addition to having the two or three primary types of inattentive, hyperactive, and then a combination, there are other subtypes of ADHD. Some people seek high stimulus or high stimulus behavior seeking. So that means these might be people who want to skydive and want to drive really fast cars and do all these things because with that rush that they get, somehow it calms them down in a way, or they find some sort of peace in this high stimulus behavior. Other people have depression or anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder or all sorts of different types of combinations with ADHD, because ADHD often exists in tandem with other mental illnesses. The last type of ADHD that the authors wanted to get into is pseudo ADHD. And I think this is important to bring up because today, with the internet and our tablets and smartphones and all those things, it's easy for people to hop from Facebook to Twitter to the news to all these different forms of communication, and they might feel like, well, I have a hard time staying attentive to one task or another, but maybe it's just a result of our culture these days of having so many different forms of entertainment and stimulus. And though some people might think they have ADHD, maybe it's just a more society-induced inattentive behavior rather than something clinical. So now that I've talked about all those different types of ADHD, I'd love to talk about how somebody gets diagnosed and what happens from there. So getting diagnosed. Normally, the steps to getting diagnosed is a doctor, a psychiatrist, often will take your symptoms, take your history, starting from when you were a child. Talk about how were you performing in school from a very young age, all the way through middle school and high school, depending on your age, of course, up to whatever age you are. Some people don't experience any sort of profound problems until they're in college. Maybe they get away from home. Other people make it through college and in grad school start to see their symptoms develop. And in addition to having your personal history taken by the doctor and you presenting what you know, it's also very important that, if possible, at least one other person close to you, whether it's a parent or your partner or other relatives or a very close friend, also presents their observations for how you were developing, because oftentimes those might be different because than the individual's observations, since people with ADHD are thought of often as not being very good self-observers for various reasons. So once the history is taken, there are about 4 steps that need to happen for the doctor to make the diagnosis. Number 1, you have to have the symptoms. Number 2, you have to have had the symptoms since childhood. And there's different definitions about what ADHD is and isn't, but most people go by the DSM, which is the guide for psychiatrists and psychiatric professionals and psychologists. They all use these guidelines to diagnose mental illness. So you have to have the symptoms since childhood. You have to have the symptoms to a greater degree than peers of your same age. So they evaluate where are other people in general at your age. And the last part is the professional has to believe that no other diagnosis could explain your symptoms. So once you've been diagnosed, there's 2 steps or 2 facets of treatment that people turn to for some sort of relief or improvement of their symptoms. The first is drugs, medication. Some people take antidepressants, and some people take other types of drugs like Ritalin and the concentrated form of Ritalin that's slow release called Concerta. There's all sorts of different drugs. At this point, I'm not particularly interested in drugs, so I'm not going to go into that in great detail. The other thing that the author mentions that I found particularly profound is that generally mental health professionals don't feel that it's their job to tell people what to do, they just ask questions. But with people with ADHD, the authors who are absolute authorities, though their word is not without fault entirely. Everybody is fallible, but these people have extensively studied ADHD, and it's in their opinion that coaching and skill building is an essential part of the treatment of ADHD. If people have low self-esteem, if they have bad time management skills, they have a hard time organizing tasks, finding things, all of these different problems that are associated with ADHD, if somebody, a mental health professional, helps coach you through building the skills to learn to be on time, to learn to not lose your things because you put them in the same place every time, if somebody can help you build those skills, then in tandem with medication for many people, though not everybody has to take medication, that this coaching is much different than what mental health professionals use to treat people with other conditions. So I found that very interesting because clearly in our society, a lot of people take medication to resolve a lot of different issues, and prescription drugs do save people from a lot of pain, both physical and mental. But it's hard to say whether or not we're over-medicated, but the fact that coaching and skill building is viewed as an essential part of treatment, to me, was very encouraging, because I'm not good at managing my time, I'm not good at planning projects, I don't necessarily have the best self-image all the time, but if somebody can help me through that in a way that doesn't necessitate drugs. Clearly everybody's situation is different, and I don't know what's right for you or your loved one or whoever you're watching this video for, but I found that interesting. So I do recommend this book. I think it really personalizes the disease because of the excerpts that detail different subjects' lives, and they're for people of all ages, for young people and adults, and I hope you found this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. So thank you very much for watching.